beginning, there were gods, mighty beings who shaped the heavens and the earth. Among them stood the Godhead, a figure of infinite power and wisdom, ruling over all creation with unyielding authority. Beneath the Godhead were the major deities, each wielding vast domains: fire, water, wind, and time. And below them, serving in obscurity, were the small gods, lesser beings tasked with maintaining the mundane workings of the divine order. For centuries, these small gods performed their duties without complaint, tending to thresholds, carrying messages, and performing rituals for their superiors. But as eons passed, resentment began to fester. They saw themselves as no less worthy than the greater gods, yet they were denied recognition, honor, and freedom. Their voices went unheard, their ambitions suppressed. One among them, Caelen, became the voice of this growing discontent. A charismatic and ambitious figure, he questioned the fairness of the divine hierarchy. Why should we serve forever? He asked his fellow small gods in secret gatherings beneath the celestial city. Are we not gods ourselves? Do we not possess the same spark of divinity that burns within the Godhead? His words struck a chord with many. Nyxara, goddess of beauty, whispered her agreement. Therion, a warrior god haunted by past failures, found solace in Caelen's vision of liberation. Together, they plotted a rebellion, not against the Godhead directly, but against the constraints placed upon them. Inspired by tales of mortal ingenuity and resilience, they turned their gaze toward Earth, where humanity thrived despite its frailty. It was said that mortals held untapped potential, their spirits capable of achieving greatness if guided by divine blood. If the small gods could sire offspring with humans, they reasoned, those children would inherit both divine power and mortal ingenuity. These Demiarchs, as they came to call them, would rise above both gods and men, ushering in a new age of equality and freedom. But such unions were forbidden by the Godhead, who decreed that gods must remain separate from mortals. To defy this law was to invite wrath, and perhaps annihilation. Yet Caelen and his followers were undeterred. Driven by hope and desperation, they prepared to descend to Earth, ready to risk everything for a chance at true power. Far below the heavens, in a lush valley surrounded by towering mountains, a group of young women gathered by a crystal-clear stream. They laughed and splashed one another, their voices rising like birdsong into the morning air. Their laughter carried far beyond the valley, reaching even the ears of the small gods who had begun to watch from afar. Among the watchers was Nyxara, whose heart quickened at the sight of the mortals. She had always been drawn to beauty, whether it resided in stars, flowers, or faces. Now, gazing upon the daughters of men, she felt something stir within her, a longing she could not name. Their skin glowed softly in the sunlight, their hair shimmered like silk, and their eyes sparkled with life. They moved with grace and confidence, unaware of the divine eyes fixed upon them. Caelen joined her shortly thereafter, his expression thoughtful. "They are remarkable," he murmured, watching as one of the women dipped her hand into the water, letting droplets cascade back into the stream. "Do you see it? The spark of potential waiting to be unleashed." Nyxara nodded, her gaze lingering on a particular girl with long golden hair and piercing green eyes. "She reminds me of us," she said quietly, full of fire, yet bound by limits imposed by others. Tharion arrived next, his presence heavy with uncertainty. "We shouldn't interfere," he warned, though his eyes betrayed his fascination. "The Godhead will punish us if we do." Caelen placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Not if we succeed. Imagine what our children could achieve. A race stronger, wiser, and freer than any before them. Mortals have much to teach us about perseverance and creativity. Together we can create something extraordinary." Convinced by his words, or perhaps by their own desires, the small gods resolved to act. That night, under cover of darkness, they descended to Earth, cloaking themselves in mortal forms to blend seamlessly among the humans. The golden-haired girl's name was Aelira, and she lived in a small village nestled at the edge of the valley where Nyxara first saw her. At first, Nyxara approached cautiously, cloaked in mortal form and calling herself Nisa. She watched Aelira from afar for days, marveling at how the sunlight seemed to dance within her hair and how her laughter brought light to even the darkest moments. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Nyxara mustered the courage to speak. She found Aelira sitting alone by the stream, sketching patterns in the sand with a stick. "Your art is beautiful," Nyxara said softly, startling Aelira. Aelira looked up, her green eyes wide with surprise. "Who are you?" she asked, clutching the stick tightly. "Nisa," Nyxara replied, smiling warmly. "I'm a traveler. I've heard tales of this place and its people, and I wanted to see it for myself." Aelira studied her for a moment before relaxing slightly. "You have a way about you, a calmness that feels strange yet comforting. Are you lost?" "Not lost," Nyxara said, sitting beside her. "Just seeking answers." Over the following weeks, Nyxara visited Aelira often, always careful to appear human. They talked long into the night, sharing stories of their lives. Aelira spoke of her dreams, to become a healer, to travel beyond the mountains, to understand the mysteries of the stars. Nyxara listened intently, feeling a connection she hadn't known was possible. But it wasn't just words that drew them together. It was the quiet moments, the shared glances across a fire-lit room, the gentle touch of hands brushing against each other as they reached for the same piece of fruit, the unspoken understanding that passed between them when no one else was around. Slowly but surely, Nyxara began to see Aelira not just as a mortal, but as someone extraordinary, someone worth breaking every rule for. One moonlit night, as they sat beneath a canopy of stars, Nyxara finally revealed part of her true nature. She told Aelira of the heavens, of the gods who ruled above, and of her own place among them. Aelira listened without fear, her expression filled with wonder rather than awe. "You're a goddess," Aelira whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Why would you choose me?" "Because you remind me of what I've forgotten," Nyxara admitted, her heart heavy with longing. "In the heavens, we are bound by duty and order. But here, with you, I feel alive. You teach me what it means to dream, to hope, to love." Tears welled up in Aelira's eyes as she took Nyxara's hand. "Then stay," she pleaded. "Stay with me, and let us create something greater than either of us could alone." And so, Nyxara stayed, Together they forged a bond that transcended the boundaries of divinity and mortality, a love so powerful it would shape the course of history. Tharion and Lyra Tharion's journey to love was far more turbulent than Nyxara's, a warrior god haunted by past failures. He initially viewed mortals with skepticism. When he first encountered Lyra, a fierce warrior maiden training in a remote glade, his initial reaction was one of challenge rather than admiration. Lyra stood out immediately, not because of her beauty, though she was striking, but because of her skill. Her movements were precise, her strikes deadly, and her resolve unshakable. Tharion watched her from the shadows, intrigued despite himself. No mortal should possess such strength or determination. Their first meeting ended in conflict. Lyra sensed his presence and confronted him, mistaking him for an intruder. Their weapons clashed with sparks flying, each testing the other's limits. Tharion marveled at her tenacity, while Lyra grew increasingly frustrated by his superior skill. "Why do you fight me?" she demanded, after disarming him during a particularly brutal exchange. "I came to observe," Tharion admitted, sheathing his sword, "but now I see there's more to you than meets the eye." Over time, their sparring sessions became less about combat and more about mutual respect. Lyra taught Tharion the value of discipline and honor, while he shared with her the knowledge of ancient battles and strategies. They debated philosophy, politics, and the nature of power, their conversations stretching late into the night. Yet it wasn't until a raiding party attacked Lyra's village that their bond truly deepened. Tharion fought alongside her, protecting her people with unmatched ferocity. As the dust settled and the villagers cheered, Lyra turned to him, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "You risked everything for us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" Tharion hesitated, then confessed, "Because I see in you what I once sought to be, a warrior who fights not for glory, but for justice." From that day forward, their relationship evolved from rivalry to partnership, and eventually to love. Lyra challenged Tharion to confront his doubts and fears, while he encouraged her to embrace her leadership potential. Together, they envisioned a world where strength was tempered by compassion, a vision they hoped to pass down to their future child. Vorath. Unlike Nyxara and Tharion, Caeleth's connection with Erendor was built on intellect and shared purpose. Erendor, a wise and just king, ruled over a prosperous kingdom renowned for its fairness and innovation. Caeleth, drawn to his reputation, disguised himself as a wandering scholar and sought an audience with the monarch. Their initial discussions revolved around governance and philosophy. Caeleth admired Erendor's ability to balance tradition with progress, while Erendor respected Caeleth's vast knowledge and unconventional ideas. Over time, their conversations grew longer and more personal, touching on topics of destiny, ambition, and the role of leaders in shaping society. "What drives you, King Erendor?" Caeleth asked one evening, as they strolled through the palace gardens. "Is it the desire for greatness, or the need to leave a legacy?" Erendor paused, considering the question carefully. "Both, perhaps. But ultimately, it's the responsibility I feel toward my people. Their well-being is my highest priority." Caeleth smiled, sensing a kindred spirit. "And yet don't you ever wish for more? For freedom to pursue your own dreams, unfettered by expectations?" Erendor chuckled. "Perhaps, but freedom without purpose is meaningless." It was during these exchanges that Caeleth realized the depth of Erendor's wisdom and his potential as a partner in his grand plan. Gradually, he revealed glimpses of his true identity, speaking of the heavens and the limitations imposed upon the gods. Erendor listened with curiosity, neither dismissing nor fully accepting Caeleth's claims. "If what you say is true," Erendor said finally, "then perhaps our worlds can learn from each other. Mortals may lack divine power, but we possess resilience and creativity that even gods envy." Caeleth nodded, his heart swelling with hope. "Together, we can create something extraordinary, a lineage destined to transform the world." Thus their union was sealed, not merely out of passion, but out of a shared vision for the future. From this union came Aelira, a child whose birth marked the beginning of a new era. As the bonds between the small gods and the daughters of men strengthened, so too did their resolve to defy the Godhead's will. Each relationship was unique, shaped by the personalities and desires of those involved, yet all shared a common thread, an undeniable connection that defied logic and transcended the barriers of divinity and mortality. For Nexara, it was love and inspiration. For Therion, it was redemption and purpose. For Caeleth, it was partnership and vision. And for the daughters of men, it was the promise of a brighter future, born from the union of two worlds. But as their children grew and their ambitions expanded, they soon discovered that love alone could not shield them from the wrath of the Godhead or the consequences of their actions. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and the harvest would be bitter indeed. When the Godhead learned of the rebellion, its fury was like a storm unleashed upon the world. The heavens darkened, as if mourning the betrayal of its own children. Lightning split the skies in jagged streaks, and thunder rolled across the land with a sound so deep it shook the very foundations of existence. Emissaries of the Godhead appeared in blinding flashes of light, their forms towering and radiant, wreathed in flames that seemed to burn without consuming. The first strike came swiftly and mercilessly. Entire cities were obliterated by divine fire, their ruins smoldering under a sky painted black with ash. Rivers boiled away into steam, forests burned to cinders, and mountains crumbled into valleys. Mortals fled in terror, crying out for mercy, but the Godhead's wrath knew no bounds. It sought not only to punish the small gods and their Demiarch offspring, but also to remind humanity of its place in the grand design. From atop the shattered remains of a once great city, Caeleth watched in horror as the world he had hoped to reshape was torn apart before his eyes. His dreams of equality and freedom now seemed foolish, a fleeting mirage in the face of overwhelming power. Yet even as doubt crept into his heart, defiance remained. "We will not bow," he declared to his followers, his voice trembling but resolute. "Even if we fall, our cause will endure." The war began in earnest, a clash of titanic forces that defied comprehension. On one side stood the emissaries of the Godhead, beings of pure energy and unyielding will. Their weapons gleamed with celestial runes, capable of slicing through stone and steel alike. They moved with grace and precision, each strike carrying the weight of eternity. On the other side were the Demiarchs, inheritors of both divine power and mortal ingenuity. Aelira summoned storms with a wave of her hand, unleashing torrents of rain and wind against the advancing emissaries. Vorath wielded fire like a living entity, his blade glowing red-hot as he carved paths through enemy ranks. Other Demiarchs called upon earth, water, and shadow, using every ounce of their strength to hold back the tide. But the balance tipped inexorably toward the Godhead's forces. For every victory the Demiarchs claimed, tenfold losses followed. Villages burned, crops withered, and rivers ran dry. The land itself seemed to mourn, cracking open in fissures that swallowed entire armies whole. Even the air grew heavy, thick with the stench of death and despair. Caught between two warring factions, humanity bore the brunt of the devastation. Innocent men, women, and children perished by the thousands, their cries rising to the heavens in a chorus of anguish. Fields lay barren, livestock vanished, and hope dimmed like a dying flame. Some turned to prayer, pleading for deliverance from either side, while others despaired, believing there was no salvation to be found. It was during this darkest hour that the Godhead revealed its true nature, not merely as a force of vengeance, but as a guardian of creation. Though its wrath fell heavily upon the rebels, it spared those mortals who had played no part in the conflict. In moments of quiet reflection, the Godhead spoke through visions and dreams, reminding humanity of its worth and potential. "Why do you protect them?" Caelen demanded in a rare encounter with an emissary of the Godhead. "They are weak, fragile creatures. Surely they deserve none of your compassion." The emissary regarded him with sorrowful eyes. "You mistake their weakness for insignificance. Humanity possesses something far greater than raw power, the capacity for love, sacrifice, and growth. It is these qualities that make them worthy of my care." Caelen scoffed, though inwardly doubt gnawed at him. "Then why destroy them now? To preserve them." The emissary replied simply, "Your rebellion threatens to consume all that makes them great. Without intervention, they would perish beneath the weight of your ambitions." Jealousy among the small gods. As the war raged on, the smaller gods began to feel a pang of envy, unlike anything they had known before. They had sought to elevate themselves above humanity, believing their divine blood made them superior. Yet here was the Godhead, demonstrating a love for mortals that surpassed anything they could offer. Nyxara, watching from afar as the Godhead saved yet another village from destruction, felt a bitter sting in her chest. "Why does it care for them so much?" she whispered to herself. "What do they have that we lack?" Tharion, too, struggled with similar feelings. "We gave them gifts of power and knowledge," he muttered bitterly, "and still the Godhead favors them over us." Their jealousy festered, fueling their resolve to fight despite the odds. If they could not win through strength alone, perhaps they could sway the hearts of humanity to their side. But time was running out, and the Godhead's forces pressed ever closer. In the final days of the war, Aelira emerged as the last beacon of hope for the Demiarchs. Her battles became legendary, each one a testament to her unwavering spirit. Against one emissary, she summoned a tempest so fierce it blinded its target, allowing her allies to escape. Against another, she used her healing powers to revive fallen comrades, buying precious moments of respite. Yet even Aelira could not withstand the full force of the Godhead's wrath indefinitely. During a climactic duel atop a crumbling fortress, she faced Zarek, the most formidable of the emissaries. His golden armor glowed with an inner fire, and his sword hummed with ancient magic. "You are brave, child," Zarek said, his voice resonating like distant thunder. "But bravery alone cannot save you." Aelira stood tall, her green eyes blazing with determination. "Then let me show you what else I possess." Their battle raged for hours, shaking the fortress to its core. Lightning arced between them, splitting the sky. Winds howled like banshees, tearing at the fabric of reality. Mountains groaned beneath their feet, their peaks crumbling into dust. Despite her skill and courage, Aelira began to tire, her movements slowing as exhaustion set in. As Zarek prepared to deliver the final blow, Aelira cried out, not in fear, but in defiance. You may destroy me, but you cannot extinguish the spark within humanity. They will rise again, stronger than ever. Her words struck a chord deep within Zarek, or perhaps within the consciousness of the Godhead itself. For a moment, the emissary hesitated, lowering his blade. Then with a gesture, he teleported her away from the battlefield, leaving her alive, but defeated. The final judgment. With the Demiarchs scattered and captured, the Godhead issued its verdict. The small gods and their offspring would be erased from existence, their essences dissolving into the ether. Humanity, however, would be spared, given a chance to rebuild and rediscover its potential. Caelen accepted his fate with dignity, though regret clouded his final moments. "We meant only to free them," he said softly, "to give them a voice. Their voices are strongest when left untouched by divine interference." The Godhead responded through its emissaries. "Let this be a lesson to you and to them." One by one, the Demiarchs faded into nothingness, their legacies reduced to memories. Aelira lingered longest, her form growing translucent as she gazed upon the survivors below. To Caelen, the mortal soldier who had loved her, she entrusted a token, a pendant shaped like a star. "Remember us not as conquerors," she whispered, her voice carried by the wind, "but as a warning. True strength lies in unity, not dominion." Then she was gone, leaving behind a world scarred but hopeful. In the aftermath of the war, humanity began to heal. Survivors rebuilt their homes, cultivated new fields, and nurtured future generations. Free from divine interference, they charted their own course, learning from the mistakes of the past and striving toward a brighter future. Fields bloomed with vibrant flowers, children laughed in meadows, and lovers walked hand in hand under starlit skies. The scars of the war lingered, reminders of the cost of ambition and pride. Yet amidst the ruins, hope flourished, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And so ended the reign of the Demiarchs. Their story served as a reminder that even the mightiest fall when blinded by hubris. But from their ashes rose a new era, a time when humanity could forge its own destiny, guided by the love of a Godhead that valued them above all else.